back to our studio. On this first actual course presentation, we will be taking a short memory trip down the software development principles. Because on this course module we will be talking about designing new software, designing new product and designing new service, creating your first product for your startup company. We will be doing a quick summary on the principles and basic concepts of software engineering. These will be used on our later presentations when our industrial speakers are talking about their experiences on how their companies got started. So it would be a good idea to refresh a couple of these concepts and ideas on what they actually mean. So with this welcome, let's move to the presentation. To get started with the discussion about how new products are designed and produced, we have to go through a few basic concepts, or just to remind ourselves on what actually the different things are. Obviously, on these topics we could be spending tens and tens of hours of lectures, because these are things that basically cover entire master's thesis programs. But to give a brief outline on how things are done so that we get a common ground on which we can discuss on. So basically, when we start from requirements or start with an idea, the basic concept is here. We identify a need and identify a set of customers and users who might be interested in our new product or service. From this group of people and from the technical requirements and technical limitations, we compile a list of requirements. For usability, for technical requirements, for how the service is delivered, what sort of phones we can use, do we have web interface, and so on and so on. So basically establishing what needs to exist so that we can make these things. These requirements also provide us with an analytical architecture, saying that we actually have a sort of an idea on what sort of things we need to do to make things happen. And with this idea or design for an architecture, then we can actually do the implementation, create the actual architecture, set up the servers, databases, create the mobile applications and all the other necessary things so that we get our product or service online. Then it's just a matter of developing the source code, testing out that everything works, and as an outcome we have a deployable software. Of course, this is a really idealistic model. First of all, considering that we have to also think how we want to maintain our software. Of course, it's easy to come up with an idea. It's a bit more difficult to get the idea to the degree that we can actually design on the requirements or consider the requirements or make the specifications on what we want to do. Following the specifications with the design process, development process and quality assurance process leads us to an acceptance and a process where we, for example, we can make an internal decision that okay, this is something that we will take into use. However, of course, putting something available for the customers isn't the only thing that actually needs to happen. When we put something available for the customers, then we also need to do the maintenance and support service cycle. And at some point in the future, we also need to consider how we want to replace this product, or if this product is ever going to be viable enough so that we want to keep it or extend it or upgrade it. And when we decide that we need to move on, this is called end of support. So basically, when we are talking about software process, the development process of making the first product, we are talking about the pipeline from requirements analysis and specification via design, development and quality assurance to the acceptance. But also, realistically, when we are designing things, we need to consider the software life cycle, meaning that when we are making a new product or service, we need to consider how we are going to fund the first development and how we are going to fund the distribution of the product to customers, marketing the product or maintaining the product so that it generates us income,
until we make the decision that we want to end the support of this particular thing. Also, of course, it's impossible to get all the requirements and make the specifications complete once. So we do design work, and based on our designs, we do development work, and based on both, we do quality assurance and testing work to see if these things work, what we have designed and developed. Usually, this requires iterative approach, meaning that based on our results from the test audiences or internal testing, we need to go back to the design and revise or improve our designs, and based on that improve or do second step of the development and do quality assurance on that. Usually this iterative development is arranged so that we have about 1 month of high-term goals and 1 week of short-term goals, so that we are continuously progressing on our work. And of course, keep in mind that this is just for the first version of the product. When we are doing the first version of the product, we are not generating any income. We need to create something that attracts customer and people paying for our product, but still is limited enough that we have enough money to do those things. So if you want to read more about these software development cycles or how this in actual world would be done, for example, Scrum model expressed here is something that you might want to take a look at. Like said, it's distributing or dividing the project into smaller steps, which have 30-day and 1 day or 1 week cycles to create and test and ensure that everything works. After all of these longer cycles, we have improvements for the product, and if we are, for example, making a mobile app or online service, we can then put these additions available to our customers. This also means that when we have the first viable product, then we can keep making additions for that product and still have something to offer for our customers and generate income from our work. Also, when we are developing product, we need to consider what is actually worthwhile things to do or develop for the first version. If we are making something that's completely useless or releasing something that doesn't actually function or do the thing it was meant to do, it's useless product, and of course we will be losing all the few customers we have. Also, we have to create useful product. Useful is good, but it's usually not enough because you are bound to have competition on the field. So we need to invest further to be competitive, and at some point when we are competitive, we also might come up with a situation where we are doing excessive quality assurance work. So what do we need to be useful for our customer, competitive against our competitors or companies which will be releasing similar product to ours, because we will have competition even if we are making the first greatest and best idea ever, and also ensure that when we first release something, it's not useless, it has to be at least useful, and it has to be useful enough so that it stays competitive when we are facing competition from the markets. So also, when we are creating a new product or creating a new service, we also need to consider what do we want to do with the product, or what sort of things we need to focus on. When we are introducing a new product or service, we of course want to emphasize the user support so that we can gather more people to use our product, make people like our thing, fix the errors, make it attractive so that it collects people and it generates revenue. When we hit the next stage, the growth stage, we need to correct the existing faults, because of course there are always going to be some bugs, there are always going to be some maintenance needs, and there's always going to be some problems with the product. But of course, if we have these problems and bugs be rare enough that most users never encounter them, then we are able to get more customers, and we can we use the money generated by that income to fix the existing faults that we know of, or find new ones by doing improvements on the quality. When we are stable on that, we are at the maturity phase. So at this phase, we will have emphasis on enhancements, making the product better. But this is, of course, something that's way beyond the prototype and first release and first product territory. At this point, our company is already established and no longer a startup, because it has a product which it's maintaining, and it has the possibility to use money to develop the product further. Finally, unfortunately, all products and services on the life cycle face the decline phase. It means that we have a product that has users, has corrected all the faults, and has all the features that our customers might need, and it's not worthwhile anymore to add new abilities or services or options to the users. But of course, we have to also remember that the technology marches onwards all the time. So we have to keep our product usable in the new mobile phones, in the better tablets, for example, on new mobile product platforms. But this is all something that's the decline, maturity, and growth phase are something that's not really about this course. This course is about generating your first product. So what we are doing is focusing on the proof of concept prototype. The proof of concept prototype is a product that we can use to understand what we actually could do and what would be a feasible thing to implement, so that it actually, when successful, is a product that creates us income. So proof of concept isn't a product yet. Proof of concept is a small exercise to test the real-world potential of an incomplete idea. It's early stage product which shows that this product or this feature or this system can be developed. It functions on the existing or given technological infrastructure, and it could have potential users, and it could be created into an actual real-world thing that we would have real users and would be a real product asset for the company. So, like said, this is just something that we test out. This is a 1 week, 2 week, 1 month development work. It's the first test version of service or product idea, because some ideas work on paper, but they don't work in practice, and some ideas work in practice but do not work in paper. Also, this enables us to be able to demonstrate the basic concept of functionality to test audiences or people who might be looking for opportunities or possibilities to fund your idea. They want to see that your idea actually works, and this is the thing that shows them that this is my idea and this could potentially work. It's quickly done, and it's not actually something you develop into an actual product. If the idea works, then you start to develop the actual first version, and that's called minimum viable product. So minimum viable product, or MVP, is a product with enough features to attract early adopter customers. And it also validates your product idea in the product development cycle. This is something that you can use to attract your first customers, attract additional funding, and generate more income to be able to do the next growth or next product steps and stages after the initial one, where you more or less come up with the idea and come up with the first thing that can work. So basically, using this illustration, we have 6 stages of drawing a horse. This, number 3, would be your proof of concept prototype. It's the first version that actually shows that a horse can be drawn, and it gives the impression that if you know that you are drawing a horse, you sort of know or get the idea that what the product would be or could be. The next stage includes the features that it can be identified as a horse, but of course it's still incomplete. But this is the version you use to get funding or attract investors or show other people or the people you are trying to recruit into your startup that this is actually what we will be doing, and this is the product and service we are building. The minimum viable product is the next stage. This is something that's clearly a horse already, and of course it lacks features, but it's still something that functions as a drawing of a horse if we would never ever need a drawing of a horse. And finally, this is of course the version you planned. This is the version which implements all the ideas you have. This is the version which is the target growth of your new first product or first service. This has implemented all the features, and it's something that's very excellent drawing of a horse. So this is something that would be the final end stage of your work. But still, you start your design process with a proof of concept, which was a illustration of an outline, and the versions 4 and 5 are the ones you use to attract funding and get your first customers. So, in summary, things that you need to remember from this module are the following. So, the software development, what generally constitutes software development? What are the stages involved and what sort of things happen there? What is the software life cycle? What happens there? And for example, if you are interested in reading more about this, go online and check out the Scrum model or check the additional reading materials of this module. Also, the concepts of proof of concept prototype and minimum viable prototype are important on this module because we will be talking about both, and you will be tasked to think things as you were designing your first proof of concept prototype for a new product or service for your startup.